Welcome to Jewish World Weekly on I-24 News. I'm Emily Francis. Each week, we'll focus on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest here in Israel and throughout the diaspora and the global Jewish community. And we are starting with our top 5 items in the Jewish world, presented by Alex Schloss. Alex.
Thanks, Emily. Here are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. 4 rioters who attacked Maccabi Tel Aviv fans in Amsterdam have been jailed. The Dutch court heard that these attacks were planned against Israeli and Jewish fans and handed out sentences ranging from 1 month to 6 months. One other rioter under the age of 18 was given a community service order. According to figures from the Jewish Agency, 35,000 Jews have emigrated or made aliyah to Israel since the war with Hamas erupted on October 7th. Approximately 1/3 of those new immigrants are between the ages of 18 and 35, with a 300% increase in aliyah applications from France, 150% increase from Canada, and an 100% increase from the US. A lawsuit has been filed in Northern California against 2 congressmen for approving military aid to Israel. The class action lawsuit against Democrats Mike Thompson and Jared Huffman allege that they have inflicted, quote, moral and emotional injury by funding the, quote, genocide in Gaza. A new study has revealed that around $10 billion worth of assets have been seized from Syria's Jewish community since the start of the 20th century. At one point in time, one of the largest Jewish communities, religious persecution at the start of the century, compounded by decades of brutal dictatorship, has meant that most of Syria's Jews were either killed or fled to Israel. Today, the number of Syrian Jews stands at fewer than just 10 individuals. And a rare oil lamp dating back to 1700 years has been discovered during excavations near the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. The lamp is decorated with imagery related to the Jewish Second Temple in Jerusalem, including a 7-branch menorah. It was displayed in Jerusalem to mark this year's Hanukkah celebrations. Those are your top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Emily.
Jewish people all over the globe are continuing to experience the disturbing effects of anti-Semitism, not just on social media, but also mobs of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian protesters have been taking to the streets around the world, with Canada not being an exception. Canadian scholars claim that anti-Semitism is deeply embedded in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Canada. A Toronto synagogue has been vandalized 7 times since last April. Similarly, Jewish schools have also been targeted. Joining us now from Toronto is Lance Davis, the CEO of JNF Canada. Hello, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So very disturbing. We know we've been all watching these things unfold around the world. You think of Canada, you think of a place that doesn't usually get in the middle of politics. So it is very surprising to see. We know incidents have increased, but a new report says that it's increased by 670% just since October 7th.
Absolutely. And that report is actually based on some of the research done by I-24 and beyond incidents of anti-Semitism. If you look at the 2023 numbers, B'nai B'rith's audit demonstrated that there's been almost more than a doubling of the anti-Semitic incidents to almost 6,000. If we look at police reported hate crimes, we see that 19% of all hate crimes are against the Jewish community. And within religious groups, 70% of hate crimes against religious groups are perpetrated against the Jewish community. We're 1% of the population. So this is incredibly disturbing.
It is really disturbing, and to think about it, all the institutions that have been affected, bomb threats at about 100 institutions, drive-by shootings, Jewish schools, Toronto, Montreal, like everywhere, even going as far west as British Columbia. But how much have the police and the authorities responded to these crimes, and is it in a way that makes Jewish people feel secure leaving the house?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the response hasn't been strong enough. And that's one of the items that the Jewish community is clamoring for, is for more police enforcement. People need to feel safe, and there are so many people who have been affected by this, either directly or indirectly. Almost everybody knows somebody who's been impacted by the rise of anti-Semitism. And yes, we are calling on the police, and even more importantly, all levels of government who are giving direction to the police forces so that they're empowered to take action. And we're feeling in many respects very disappointed with our political leadership because this is dragged on. The statistics we presented were from 2023. Can you imagine what 2024 numbers are going to be like? Please cover this story next year when the data comes out. It's going to be unbelievably shocking. And yes, the community is incredibly concerned about our well-being.
Yeah, even you hear reports, and even small places like Winnipeg and smaller, Canadian provinces and cities that never really have made the news because they're pretty quiet places. So to hear this is obviously disturbing. So why also studies are showing, they're calling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that anti-Semitism is embedded in his term as a prime minister. How so? Is that just a side effect, or do you think it starts from the top?
I think leaders lead, and unfortunately, our government hasn't led. They've allowed so many incidents to transpire without any strong action, and so we in the Jewish community are indeed infuriated. I represent the Jewish National Fund, and as you've reported before, our charitable status was revoked during Prime Minister Trudeau's term. That's an incredibly unacceptable outcome. There have been countless opportunities for the Prime Minister to step up and to be forceful and to make a stand, to take actual real action more than words and tweets. For example, prohibiting all displays of terrorist entities. That could have been outlawed and enforced. Hasn't happened.
Right. Also, there was a protest outside of a NATO assembly, and apparently the prime minister was seen dancing at a Taylor Swift concert and didn't even respond for 24 hours to weigh in. I imagine that stirred up a lot of controversy as well.
Absolutely. And of course, the prime minister is entitled to go to a concert with his family. Nevertheless, when something this important happens, as I said before, leaders need to lead. And when you wait 24 hours to respond to something that was of an international incident, it was covered across the globe, the rioting in Montreal. It's vitally important for the prime minister to take a stand, and it's more important than just words and tweets. The tweet is the last thing we need. We need action.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us from Toronto. Lance Davis, CEO of JNF Canada.
Thank you.
January 27th will mark 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, the death camp in Poland, where around 1 million Jews were murdered alongside thousands of Romani people, ethnic Poles, and Soviet prisoners of war. Notably, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will not attend the event in Poland over fears that he could be detained due to his arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. But despite being taught in many schools across the world, some people still do not fully understand the horrors of Auschwitz. Every year, thousands of people visit the death camp in order to learn more about the horrific crimes against humanity that took place. Here's more from I-24 News correspondent Guy Azriel, who went to Auschwitz alongside a group of Muslims from Morocco, many of whom were taken aback by their visit.
It all started with a movie called The List of Schindler, which I have seen like 10 years ago. And so it rang the bell in my brain. I said I had to discover.
At the height of a war on 7 fronts, with anti-Semitism raging around the world, and after the October 7 massacre, a trip to the death camps in Poland takes on a different meaning. This delegation, which has come to learn about the horrors of the Holocaust, is perhaps the last thing you would expect in a year like this. And it is made up, believe it or not, of students and Muslim peace activists from Morocco.
La simple raison pour laquelle je suis là, c'est de promouvoir la tolérance et la paix. Et même si on me demande de guerre, mais c'est d'honorer les victimes de l'Holocauste.
Je pense que c'est très important de reconnaître qu'un événement pareil s'est passé.
As the journey progresses, the Moroccan Muslims on the delegation realize that the Holocaust has a power you can't really capture on screen, even if you've seen Schindler's List. A visit to the concentration camps is a completely different movie.
I didn't think it was so intense. It's beyond belief. And I think I'm glad to be here as a Moroccan Muslim to honor the memory of the dead.
Very great experience, and wow, it's very eye-opening.
For me, as a Muslim, I think that the Holocaust is not only a crime against the Jews, but against humanity.
This trip has shown me that the main issue why the Holocaust happened was this mindset of us versus them.
More and more Moroccans and Muslims come and to see this experience as I did myself.
Just a week before the trip, the attack against Maccabi Tel Aviv fans in Amsterdam left a painful scar among the members of the delegation. For them, this is a particularly sensitive point.
I saw it on YouTube. It was very sad to see, but they don't represent the Moroccan spirit.
Those are the second generations of migrants to the Netherlands, and you wouldn't find these kind of actions and these kind of acts in Morocco itself. You'd see them all across Europe, but if you were to go in public in Morocco and say that you're Jewish or anything, you wouldn't be attacked.
We used to live with the Jews in my city, in Fez, in the Mellah. We used to be together. My grandparents used to tell me that they went to Jewish doctors in my city.
ובגלל זה אני פה. רק להגיד שלא כל המרוקאים אותו דבר. אני מרוקאית ואני פה בבית כנסת בפוליני.
What we saw in Europe is disheartening and heartbreaking because a lot of those people have absolutely nothing to do with what's happening and they are paying.
כן, וצריך לומר שלמרות הנכונות של המשלחת הזו להגיע לכאן, לאושוויץ, באופן פומבי, כמשלחת רשמית ממרוקו, בפועל, כשאנחנו מנסים לפתוח בשיחה, לראיין את החברים, מרביתם נמנעים מהמצלמה, עדיין חוששים להראות את פניהם.
I'm going to pay a social price, but I think it's the right thing to do. Muslims or Jewish, there's only together we can live long and prosper.
It's important to acknowledge that there's only one side, and that is the side of humanity. And nobody wants to see any other horrors being committed again in this world.
We should be the example of the world to show that Muslims could stand with Jews and could stand against anti-Semitism.
ככל שהמלחמה מתמשכת, הם מרגישים את הציבור שלהם יותר ויותר תוקפני כלפי הרעיון הזה. הם כולם יודעים שבסוף כשהם חוזרים הביתה, זה איום מאוד מוחשי.
The organization Sharaka, meaning partnership in Arabic, is behind the special journey. The organization that was born out of the Abraham Accords, working to promote a vision of peace and friendship between Israel and the Middle East and the Gulf countries.
מדובר בקומץ קטן של חבר'ה שהולכים נגד הזרם, ושאומרים, אנחנו מבינים שהסיפור מורכב, אני רואה בהם גיבורים אמיתיים. הם לא רוצים לצאת נגד העם שלהם. והם מבינים שזה מורכב. הם הניצנים הראשונים של תופעה רחבה שקורית במזרח התיכון, של פשוט חלוקה בין המתונים לבין הקיצוניים. הם מובילים את המחנה, זה לא פשוט, אבל לשם הדברים הולכים.
After a particularly significant and moving visit to the extermination camps in Poland, the messages of peace between peoples and coexistence become even more emphatic.
Morocco is all about bridging between countries and bringing peace. Hearing is free. but education, it's a whole process. It takes time.
At the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're all here to support and love each other, and we're not a threat to each other.
One day we will all live in peace and harmony, hopefully. Come to these places, come visit and see things firsthand with your own eyes.
אנחנו מרוקאים, אנחנו ככה עם יהודים, אנחנו חברים, אנחנו כמו המשפחה. מלך שלנו רוצה ישראל, ואנחנו עם ישראל.
איפה למדת עברית כל כך יפה?
מ-I24 News. כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומייה.
Following the removal of Bashar al-Assad from power, Syrians have been able to return to their homes that had previously been destroyed or turned into military bases. This includes Syria's Jewish community, where members were finally able to visit one of the oldest synagogues in the world for the first time since it was destroyed a decade ago. I24's Joe Brown has the story.
Before the conflict, there was no damage. We were entering normally. Now I am frankly disturbed. I was surprised to see the synagogue like this. God willing, it will be back as it was, but it needs time.
The site of the Jobar Synagogue, one of the oldest standing synagogues until it was destroyed in 2014 during the Syrian civil war. Built almost 3,000 years ago, it housed Syria's historic Jewish population, which used to be one of the largest in the world, but now stands at just 9 people. And these 9 people have suffered through a lot over the last 14 years, following the 2011 Syrian revolution and the civil war that followed. But now, the remaining Jews are able to revisit the site in the obliterated Jobar suburb of Syria, where the synagogue was struck by Assadist fighters, reducing the site to rubble.
The Jewish expats keep calling me saying they will rebuild it. It is an old building, not a normal modern one. It means a lot to us.
Jews made up a large population of Syria before 1948, with thousands of Jews living in major cities such as Damascus and Homs. But with anti-Semitic sentiment rising in the country, many left for the newly established State of Israel. And following the outbreak of the civil war in 2011, most of the minority that remained in Syria decided to leave. But for those who remained, like Bachor, people largely respect their Jewish identity.
I am happy. It is true that I am a Jew, but all the people like me, and wherever I go, they say to me, Shalom, Shalom. I have no problem. On the contrary, when they know that I am a Jew, they express their happiness. They like Jews. But some people have the mistaken idea that Jews are bad, and when they live with us, they find this idea wrong.
Barring any Jewish migration to Syria under the new regime, it is likely that the Syrian Jewish community will cease to exist in the years that follow. The rubble of the Jobar Synagogue, a tragic reminder of a community that once was.
The national Hanukkah lighting ceremony took place this week in Washington, but this under the cloud of what happened last year and the hostages spending a second Hanukkah in captivity. But still, bringing light in this new year is so important, and taking part in the lighting of the Hanukkah was our very own I24 News senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim, who joins us now with more. Hag Sameach to you.
Chag Sameach, Emily. The annual National Menorah lighting ceremony taking place in Washington on the first night of Hanukkah. It's the tallest, the largest menorah to be lit in the United States. It's a yearly occasion. This year, obviously different from many years. A bittersweet occasion in Washington on the first night of Hanukkah. There was singing, there was dancing, kids cheering in the aisle, a dreidel costume man going around getting the crowd energized. And at some points, a very reflective ceremony. Alejandro Mayorkas, the U.S. Secretary for Homeland Security and a Havana-born Jew, giving very brief remarks and poignant remarks about the difficulty right now in being an American Jew, dealing with the anti-Semitism, dealing with the strained relations at some points with Israel. And so this kind of had an ebb and flow to it. We got a chance to speak after the ceremony with Rabbi Levi Shem Tov, who heads up the Washington Bureau for Chabad and is the executive vice president for the American Friends of Lubavitcher, which organizes this event year after year. And he said, hey, this is not a time to give up. It's a time to keep persevering. Here's Levi Shem Tov.
The Maccabees were also exhausted, but they didn't give up. They knew that they had to win, and that's what they did. And that's why I said that those who seek to destroy us are going to meet the fate of those who tried before them. And we will hopefully see the result that those who came before us, who we celebrate tonight, saw, which is survival. Because of the Maccabean victory, we are here, and we will also prevail now as well.
The Biden admin had other representatives there, including the State Department Special Envoy for Combating Anti-Semitism, Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt. She gave her own poignant version of what the night meant to her and the rest of the crowd when she spoke with us after the ceremony. Here's Deborah Lipstadt.
Jewish life is poised on a scale from joy to oi, and we worry a lot about the oi, but today is a night of joy. Chag Sameach.
Joy to oi.
And an unscripted moment in the ceremony as well, Emily. Aviva Siegel, one of the former hostages and a wife of a current hostage being held in Gaza, attended the event with her family, and she wound up giving fairly unprepared, unscripted remarks on stage. Again, another very poignant moment in the ceremony. We asked her, when it was all over, what she was going to be thinking about when she lit the Hanukkah candles this year. Here's her response. Aviva Siegel, a former hostage and wife of a current hostage held in Gaza.
You know, I'm just gonna imagine Keith coming home and me jumping to the air and screaming, Keith, you're home? I can hug you, I can be with you. I just can't wait. I can't wait to have that miracle of Hanukkah. Just please, please, let it happen.
It's just so heartwarming to see such hope, but we know that the deal has since taken a step back since the first candle was lit. Thank you very much, I-24 News senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim. But we know Hanukkah is more than just a festival of lights. It's also the festival of fried foods and sweets. The famous sufganiyot, which is Hebrew here for donuts, are the tried and true Hanukkah treat. But since the Jewish people are diverse with ethnic twists on traditional holiday foods, today we're going to try an Iraqi favorite. So joining us now in studio is podcaster and recipe developer Sabrina Shantz. Hello and happy Hanukkah. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Happy Hanukkah, Emily.
So these are a very beautiful display. Clearly not sufganiyot. So what is this?
So these are zingula, also known as zalabia, and they're a traditional Middle Eastern dessert served on Hanukkah and on Purim. These are Iraqi zingula, and I made them with my grandmother. They're deep fried. It's a kind of a funnel cake that's then dipped in syrup, and they're super delicious. And I think a lot of the time we tend to kind of merge towards the mainstream, which is sufganiyot, donuts and latkes. But I think it's important to try the more ethnic and different Jewish food.
Well, and again, it just goes to show that, you know, food is so important to Jewish culture. It is not just gefilte fish and, forgetting the beet juice, borscht.
Yeah.
It's not gefilte fish and borscht. There's a lot more to the diversity and the ethnic diversity and the different colors that make up the Jewish people in the world. So is this somewhat, connected to the history of the Iraqi people in years of celebrating? By the way, I'm going to take one as we go.
Definitely take one. They're
delicious.
delicious.
Wow. Ooh, yummy. So it also looks like a lollipop.
Yeah.
So this goes back to being in Iraq also?
Yeah, the Iraqi community, which has been, the Jews have been in Baghdad, in Babylon for thousands of years. And I actually have a podcast where I interview Jewish grandmothers from all different backgrounds. I myself am half Iraqi, half Lebanese, married to a Persian, so I'm kind of very connected to my roots. And something that I've noticed through interviewing Jewish grandmothers is that food travels through time much more than languages and other kinds of customs. And it's so important to keep memories, heritage and tradition alive through Jewish food. And that's why I think it's important, if it's any Shabbat, Hanukkah or festival, to maybe go ask your grandparents or your parents, what were the traditional foods, find the recipes, test them and keep them alive in your
And what a great idea, because you guys saw, I'm not supposed to talk with my mouth full, but I kind of am. But I guess there's an excuse.
I'm going to take some too.
Join in. This is really so unique. And also, being in the kitchen is such a bonding experience. So like you said, having grandmothers that, again, passing down from generation to generation to generation. Some people have family recipes. They have no idea who was the first one to write the recipe. So does every kind of family kind of have their own special passed down ingredients and whatnot?
So Iraqis call this zingula, and they dip it in a sugar syrup. But I know that Libyans and Tunisians and Egyptians have a very similar dessert. They call it zingula. And I think during Hanukkah, every different Jewish kind of Edah has their own fried version, and it's worth trying them all.
Yeah, delicious.
Like
well, then you have to change every year since you have so many things going on. So you got to do the Iraqi one year, you got to do the Lebanese another, and the Persian another. So you definitely have a lot of different flavors and colors in your household specifically.
Definitely.
Wow.
And I want my kids to be able to try the food that came from...
Is it similar ingredients?
Yeah, the dough itself is just a flour, water. It's a very simple dough that you then drip through like a teapot in hot oil. And so it's deep fried the same as a donut. Then you take it out and dip it in syrup, and that's what gives it this very sweet and sticky.
Sweet and crispy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Sabrina Shantz.
Thanks for having me.
And happy Hanukkah once again, and thank you for bringing in the sweets. That is all for now. I'm Emily Francis. Thank you so much for watching Jewish World Weekly. I'm sorry I am talking with my mouth full, but be sure to tune in next week for another new edition of Jewish World Weekly. Until we see you next, have a great rest of your holiday.